The main purpose of this talk is, the reason we put it first, is I want to try to give you an overall, it's going to have to be very compressed, sketch so you understand the basic nature of the publishing industry from an economic point of view. Mostly so you understand what you're up against. I'm sure you've all heard the expression that economics is the dismal science, and I'm about to prove it to you one more time. There are some bright spots, which I'll point out to you, but to a very large degree, what we're going to be doing over the next three days is doing everything we can to teach you how to buck against the odds that you're going to face in this first talk that I'm giving. The key thing to understand about the publishing industry is that it's one of the entertainment industries. And by entertainment, I'm including the arts, any kind of form of entertainment in the arts. That can range from any kind of writing to movies, acting, stage, music, and the visual arts, painting, sculpting, beadwork, anything. The characteristic that all these industries have that makes them very peculiar is that each individual product is simultaneously a separate model from all other products. And this is what makes it so different from every other industry. Even giant car manufacturers like Toyota make a relatively small number of models of cars. They will then make a tremendous number of that model, but they don't make very many models. Whereas with books, every single book has to be different from every other book. Now, obviously they have generic similarities, and that's why, bookstores can lump them together, and this is the science fiction section, this is the romance section, so on and so forth. But despite those generic similarities, each book is different. It has to be. It's just built into the very nature of what a piece of fiction is in the first place. To give you an idea of how massive this gets, a friend of mine who's here did a little research on this a while back and discovered that at the 2006 World Convention, where the Hugo Award was handed out, the year prior to that, there were about 37,000 pieces of writing of one kind or another, ranging from novels to short stories to scripts. But there were 37,000 separate pieces of writing that could have qualified for a Hugo Award. That means that to have stayed on top of it, you would have had to read 100 pieces of writing every day just to know what was happening. And that would have included several novels. Obviously, it's impossible for anyone to do this. You simply can't keep up with it. Whereas in contrast, an industry like automotive, if you want to go out and buy a $30,000 car, it's a pretty transparent market. You spend if you're intelligent, you'll spend a few hours going through Consumer Reports, reading whatever other things you want to look at to decide what kind of car you want, find out the pros and cons of each model. Then you'll trot down to a dealership, probably take a test drive of a few of the cars you're interested in, but it's quite manageable. You cannot do it with publishing. You can't do it with music. You can't do it with sculpture, with painting. You can't even do it with movies, even though there are far fewer movies made because they're so much more expensive. But you simply can't keep up with it. It's impossible. Nobody can. This results in several things. The first is that the market is extremely opaque. It's very hard for anyone to be able to see most of that market. The second thing that results from that is that your customers, readers in our case, are going to be, by and large, extremely conservative. They don't have any choice. There are, fortunately for us, a few people who are adventurous and like to try new authors, but by and large, the great majority of readers tend to stick to a small number of authors that they're familiar with. And they will only experiment occasionally, and usually it's because someone else, the most common reason is because a friend of theirs or a relative recommends somebody and they try it or lends them a book. Sometimes just from browsing in a bookstore, but the point is your customers are going to be extremely conservative. The second problem that comes is that because it's such a huge market, and this is another reality that I found a lot of authors are very not conscious of. An author's fan base, which is the readership group that tends to follow your writing, and you have to develop one if you're going to be a professional writer and even hope to make a living at being a writing or even have it be a significant source of your income. It's a very fluid phenomenon. which I find a lot of authors, even published ones, don't really quite seem to understand. They sort of think that once they've got their fan base, it sort of stays there, and it doesn't. There will be